Masterclass, one-dimensional elastic collisions. All right, let's jump right in. Picture this.
What happens when a small, compact car, cruising along at a decent speed, suddenly rear-ends a massive, completely parked SUV, but instead of crumpling into a heap of metal, it perfectly bounces backward? How fast does the compact car rebound, and how fast does that massive SUV get pushed forward? Now, this isn't just a fun thought experiment, this is a foundational physics problem that dictates exactly how objects interact in our physical universe.
By the end of this lecture, you're going to totally conquer the core concept behind this weird interaction. We'll break down the mathematical equations that rule it and show you exactly how to apply them to real elastic collision examples, just like our bouncing car.
Section 1. The perfect bouncing collision.
So to mathematically solve that car crash, we first have to define the rules of a perfect bounce. In physics, we call this an elastic collision. Now notice the absolute keyword here, conserves. An elastic collision is one that perfectly conserves internal kinetic energy. For those of you taking notes, conserving means literally nothing is lost. No energy lost to heat, no energy lost to a loud bang, and no energy lost to crumpling metal. The energy before the crash perfectly matches the energy after the crash.
And that brings us to our next big definition, internal kinetic energy. This is the sum of the kinetic energies of all the objects in a system. Now wait, this is a super common trap, so pay attention here. We aren't just looking at the energy of the compact car or just the energy of the SUV. We're looking at the total combined energy across everything involved in the crash. If you add up the energy of Object 1 and Object 2 right before they hit, it has to perfectly equal their combined energy after they bounce apart.
Now I know what you might be thinking, but cars do crumple and crashes are super loud. And you know, you're absolutely right. Truly perfect elastic collisions, those really only happen down in the subatomic world, like when electrons strike atomic nuclei. But we can get incredibly close in our macroscopic everyday world. Picture two solid steel blocks sliding on smooth ice, or those little laboratory carts with the spring bumpers, gliding on a nearly frictionless air track. These setups practically eliminate friction and sound, creating a space where internal kinetic energy is almost perfectly conserved. So they serve as fantastic practical models for the math we're about to do.
Moving right along. Section 2, the two golden equations.
So how do we actually calculate this? Let's dive into our mathematical foundation. Here's our first tool, the conservation of momentum equation. I want you to read this equation kind of like a story. The mass of Object 1 times its initial velocity plus the mass of Object 2 times its initial velocity equals the exact same setup after the crash. Basically, the mass and velocity before perfectly dictate the mass and velocity after. Momentum is always conserved when the net external force on a system is zero.
And here is tool number 2, the conservation of internal kinetic energy equation. Just like with momentum, the total kinetic energy before the collision equals the total kinetic energy after. Now look closely at the prime marks, those little apostrophes on the right side of both equations. That's just standard physics notation for after the collision. Every v without a prime is an initial velocity, and every v with a prime is a final velocity. Simple as that.
But wait, a very common student confusion usually pops up right about here. Why do we need both of these equations? Why isn't just momentum enough? Well, think back to our car crash. After they collide, both the compact car and the SUV are moving at new, completely unknown speeds. That means we're solving for two unknown final velocities. And a fundamental rule of algebra is that if you want to solve for two independent unknowns, you absolutely must have two independent equations. Together, these two formulas are an unstoppable team.
Okay, let's put this into practice. Section 3, step-by-step collision calculation.
Let's see how this builds into an actual calculation by applying some real numbers. Here's our setup. We're mapping this perfectly back to our compact car and parked SUV analogy, just scaled down to lab sizes. Object 1 is our small, compact car. It has a mass of 0.500 kilograms, and it's moving forward at an initial velocity of 4.00 meters per second. Object 2 is our massive parked SUV. It has a mass of 3.50 kilograms and is totally at rest, which means its initial velocity is just 0.
So, how do we crack this? Let's walk through the steps. First, we write out our momentum equation. Because Object 2 is at rest, its initial momentum is 0, which instantly simplifies the whole formula. Second, we write out our kinetic energy equation. Again, the initial kinetic energy of Object 2 is 0. Third, we combine them.
If you solve the momentum equation for the final velocity of the large object and then substitute that entire expression into the kinetic energy equation, boom, you eliminate one variable. Now, you're left with a quadratic equation with only one unknown, the final velocity of the small object. And, as you might recall from algebra class, a quadratic equation is going to give you two possible mathematical answers.
When we actually solve that quadratic equation, the first answer it spits out is exactly 4.00 meters per second. But wait, that was the initial velocity. That just represents the state before the collision, so we can go ahead and toss that one out. The second mathematical solution is the one we actually want, and it is negative 3.00 meters per second. This brilliantly illustrates physics in action. That negative sign, it isn't just some quirky math thing. It is literal physical proof that the smaller object bounces backward in the exact opposite direction it came from.
Now we take that negative 3.00 meters per second, plug it right back into our simplified momentum equation, and we instantly find the final velocity of the large object. It comes out to a positive 1.00 meters per second. The math perfectly matches our intuition here. The massive parked object gets knocked forward, which is why it's a positive number. But because of its heavy mass, it moves at a much slower speed than the smaller object that struck it.
But hey, we shouldn't just trust the algebra blindly, right? Let's check our work to show that energy really did remain completely unchanged, just as our definition of an elastic collision demands. If we plug the initial masses and speeds into the kinetic energy formula, we see the system had exactly 4.00 joules of energy before the collision. Now, if we plug our new final velocities, the negative 3 and the positive 1, back into the equation, the math yields exactly 4.00 joules after the collision. The internal kinetic energy is totally conserved. The math is literally flawless.
All right, moving into Section 4, Real-World Elasticity Examples.
We've completely conquered the math, so now let's visualize these equations in the physical world to really lock it in. Here's a really interesting problem from the textbook. What happens when a 70-kilogram ice hockey goalie, initially at rest, interacts with a 0.150-kilogram puck flying right at him at 35 meters per second? Now, if he simply caught the puck and held onto it, they'd stick together. That's a totally different type of collision. But suppose the goalie and the puck have an absolutely perfect elastic collision, and the puck is reflected straight back in the exact direction it came from. Imagine applying our golden equations here. The puck, having this tiny little mass, would bounce back at incredibly high speed, while the massive goalie would only drift backward on his skates at a very tiny fraction of a meter per second. It's the exact same principle as our compact car and SUV.
If you want to see this momentum transfer with your own eyes, try this incredibly practical take-home experiment. Go grab a few identically sized ice cubes and find a perfectly smooth glass tabletop. Place them a few centimeters apart. Then just flick one ice cube directly toward a stationary one. Because the glass provides a nearly frictionless surface, you're basically creating a perfect one-dimensional elastic collision. Watch the speeds and directions carefully. If they hit dead center, the moving ice cube will stop almost completely, transferring literally all of its momentum and kinetic energy to the stationary ice cube, which then shoots forward at the exact same speed. It is a brilliant, highly visible display of the exact math we just calculated.
Okay, wrapping things up. Section 5, Summary and Next Steps. We have covered a lot of ground today, from these subatomic rules of perfect bounces to calculating the exact rebound speeds of everyday objects. So here's your summary checklist. First, elastic collisions perfectly conserve internal kinetic energy. Absolutely nothing is lost. Second, momentum is always conserved. And third, because a collision gives us two unknown final velocities, we absolutely must use both formulas in tandem to solve the system. You now have the mathematical tools to calculate any perfect one-dimensional bounce in the universe.
But before we finish up, let me leave you with this final thought. We've totally mastered bouncy, perfect elastic collisions, but we all know that's not how most actual car crashes work. So what happens when a crash is so violent that the objects crumple, lose tons of energy to heat and sound, and actually stick together as one single mass? Well, that requires a completely different approach. We call those inelastic collisions, and that is